Alright, the topic of the retreat is drawing close to the Master. And particularly I'm thinking of the Master as Sri Ramakrishna. But we can think of the Master in any way. Any teacher or master, we can think. Really, it means drawing close to God. And it seems like such a attractive message to me. We can draw close to God. We oftentimes, that's our struggle. We feel like God is far away somewhere. We feel like God is somewhere up in heaven, or God is hiding from us, or where is the Lord? Where is the divine? Actually, divine is very close. Divine is right here, but we don't feel it. Actually, we are one with God, but we don't know it. So, this idea of drawing close, come close, right here. We just need to pull up a chair and sit close. And Sri Ramakrishna used to say, God is the Kalpataru. This is the mythical wish-fulfilling tree who will grant us whatever we want. If we but ask, whatever we ask the Kalpataru will grant. In fact, the Pandit Shashadhar was visiting Sri Ramakrishna, and he asked him, "Sir, does God listen to our prayers? Does God grant our prayers? Does He answer our prayers?" And Sri Ramakrishna replies, "Yes, God is the Kalpataru. He does answer our prayers. But, another thing, you have to stand close to the tree before you ask your question. If there's a Kalpataru and you're sitting far away, you don't get your wishes fulfilled by the Kalpataru. Likewise, with the divine, we have to stand close to the tree. We have to come close. So, what does that mean, to draw close to the divine? So, I hope in the next couple of days, of course, some of you will come just for tonight, or just one day or 2 days, but we will spend our time thinking a little bit about how to draw closer to the divine, and not only how to do it, but actually doing it. Because that's one of the ways actually to come close to the divine, is simply to think about God and to talk about God. So we're going to be talking about spiritual life, and especially about Sri Ramakrishna. This center is called Ramakrishna Vedanta Ashrama. In the name of Ramakrishna, it has been established who is Sri Ramakrishna and what is special about him. And Swami Vivekananda reveals a lot about Sri Ramakrishna, and I think the more we know about Sri Ramakrishna, the more we can begin to feel close to him, close to that phenomenon. And Sri Ramakrishna says, God knows our inner feeling. One gets the desire one cherishes at the time of performing sadhana, of performing spiritual practice. As one thinks, so one receives. This is after telling Pandit Shashadhar that we need to stand close to the Kalpataru. He used to say in Bengali, Jamun bhav, temni labh. Sri Ramakrishna used to love to speak in rhymes. Now, the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna come through wonderfully clearly in translation, but one loses a little bit of the charm, because one can't translate rhyming words. You can't translate, and what it means is Jamun bhav, as is one's inner feeling, as is one's attitude. Temni labh, in that way, our gain. That's what we will receive. That's what we will attain. As is our deep inner mood, as is our bhava, as really in which direction is our mind flowing within. In that way, we will attain also. Temni labh, jamun bhav temni labh. So, what do we really want? What do we really want? I take it that because we're all come to a retreat at the Vedanta Ashrama, that what we want is a deeper spiritual life. What we want is to know God. What we want is to get peace in life And we have recognized already that we're not going to get peace by arranging all our external circumstances just perfectly. We're not going to get peace that way. We're going to attain peace through deepening our spiritual life, through touching that infinite ocean of peace, which we hear lies at the very root of our being, and which maybe we get a few glimpses of now and then. But we want to dive into that ocean and attain the fulfillment of our life. So one thing that we can do when we're thinking about approaching, drawing nearer to God, is looking at what do we really want from God, if anything. What do we really want from God? And one thing that is wonderful about going to India, that especially struck me the first time I was there, is that the whole country is oriented towards the divine. All the people, it's just a different atmosphere in the air, that everything is connected with God. Every taxi cab will have a picture of some divine form. So here, a taxi cab, there's nothing. There's no smoking. In India, there's plenty of smoking, but there's God everywhere. There's a picture of Shiva, or there's a picture of this saint or that Baba, or if it's a Sikh, there'll be Guru Nanak, or if he's a Muslim driver, there'll be some Islamic calligraphy, Arabic calligraphy, giving the name of God, because everything is done in the name of God. And everybody wants, whatever people want, they approach God first. And I relate a little experience when I was visiting Gaya. Gaya is the famous place where Buddha attained illumination under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya. But Gaya is also an important place of pilgrimage for Hindus, where they offer the pindas for their ancestors. It's a certain ritual of honoring the ancestors. And there's a wonderful temple dedicated to Lord Vishnu, which doesn't have a form, it's only a footprint, the footprint of Lord Vishnu. And Gaya is also, although it's an important place of pilgrimage and very holy, it's also notorious as a very crooked place where a lot of criminals are there. So I was staying at an ashrama, not our ashrama, but another ashrama, run by Bharat Sevashram Sangha. It's an institution which runs rest houses for pilgrims in places of pilgrimage where people won't get taken advantage of, because many places when you have the most holy place, somehow to balance things out, you also have the unholy. So you have a lot of people there to take advantage of the pilgrims. Innocent pilgrims come from sometimes hundreds and thousands of miles away to have the darshan of Lord Vishnu in Gaya, and then you have unscrupulous crooks who are there to take advantage of them. So this is one of those safe places. And I got to know one of the other devotees staying there. It turns out that he was a devotee of God, absolutely, but he was also an undercover detective.
Whoa.
And he had come to Gaya to make a big bust and arrest a bunch of criminals. And he had to do everything undercover because he still had some family in Gaya, but he actually lived in Patna. And before doing his bust, he had gone to a temple of Divine Mother, which is also in Gaya, and had vowed to offer worship to the Divine Mother. And at the conclusion of his successful bust, he went again to worship Mother, and he brought me along with him to the temple of the Mother to offer worship in gratitude for the successful bust. So in India, even the detectives, they pray to God before they do their bust. Mother, may this bust be successful. And the crooks, they also pray to God. may our robbery be successful. Right? Everyone's praying to God. So that's India. So everybody approaches God for what they need, and that's good. That's very good. Sri Krishna says so many different kinds of people approach me, and many people approach me because they're suffering, and they want relief from their suffering, or people approach me because they want something. They want something from me. They want something from God. Maybe they're seeking even knowledge. But then there are those who approach me and they don't want anything. And those are of a different category. They're all good, but those are of a different category. I am in them and they are in me, he says. So, if we really want to draw close to God, let's look, how is God, do we look on God as our servant, who should be providing us with all the things that we want and protecting us and giving us good health and giving us plenty of money and giving us a good husband or a good wife? These are all good to connect everything in our life with God. But when we want to deepen our spiritual life, we can try also approaching God and saying, I don't want anything. I don't want anything from you. I just want to be near you. Sri Ramakrishna gives the example of a rich man, no? And some poor guy comes pestering him. Can you give me some money? I need money for my son's education. I need money for my the marriage of my daughter. I need money for this. I need money for that. And the rich man is irritated. He says, well, what do you want? Go away. He won't let this guy sit near him in the carriage. He'll send him away. He'll say, go in another carriage or sit over there. But there's someone who comes to see the rich man, and he says, what do you want? I don't want anything. I just want to see you. I like to see you. I like to spend time with you. So the man is very happy. He says, yeah, come sit with me. I'm happy. He may also give him many things because he loves him. But the person who's coming to him isn't asking for anything. So when we draw, we can take it as an experiment. At least once a day, we can approach God and say, Lord, I don't want anything from you. I just want you. And if we are really able to do that, Sri Krishna says in the Gita, this wonderful verse in the 9th chapter. Let's see if I can remember it. Mostly all the verses that I memorized, I again forgot. Yeah, I can't. It's not coming. Who knows it? 922. Wait, sorry. Ye janah paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyaham. Isn't that wonderful? Those who can dedicate their entire mind to me, who put their whole mind on me and don't go running about to all the different things, with a single pointed mind. I look after them. I take care of them. I provide what they need, what they don't have, I provide. And what they have, I protect that. If they can put their whole mind on me. It's a traditional story. We don't find it in the scriptures exactly, but most of you know it. I'm sure. Arjuna and Krishna are walking, and they're on a journey, and they're walking, and they're tired, and they're thirsty. And what's this? This laptop?
It is projecting to other house, and somebody else also.
Oh, is there someone in the other house?
Yes.
Let them come here, anyhow. All right, so they're walking, and they approach. They find a house by the side of the road. It's a house of a well-to-do man. And they call out for some alms. They want a little water, a little something, little refreshments. And they hear an angry voice from inside, move on, you no, nothing here, move on. And Arjuna, so they move on. Arjuna feels annoyed. What kind of a man is this? And Sri Krishna says, may his wealth increase. May his wealth increase. Arjuna thinks, anyhow, so they go on further. And they come at a certain point, they find a little hut. And there's an old woman, old widow living there. And they call for some if they can see if they can get any alms there. And the widow is very happy to see two hungry travelers, two thirsty travelers, and she welcomes them warmly and brings them into the hut. And she has almost nothing. She has only one cow that she looks after, and that cow is her life, as it were, looking after her cow. And so she has a little milk. She offers milk to her. She washes the feet of the travelers, offers them something just what she has, not much, bare minimum, a little milk and some puffed rice and some refreshments like that. And so they thank her and they move on their way. And as they're walking away, Sri Krishna says, "May that cow die." May that cow die. Now this is too much for Arjuna. He can't bear it anymore. He says, "Lord, I don't understand you. I cannot understand you at all. We received the most rude treatment from this one house, and you said to that may that man's wealth increase. And now this humble holy woman who has served us so well, and all that she has, she has that cow, and that's if she doesn't have the cow, what will she have? And you say, let the cow die. What is that?" Yes, Arjuna, understand, hear this. See, that wealthy man, he still has so many desires. He can't put his mind on me. He still has so many desires to fulfill. Let those desires be fulfilled. Then when his desires are fulfilled, then he can turn his mind to me. But see, that lady, that old lady, she already has given me 3/4 of her mind. But 1/4 of it is still given to that cow. When that cow dies, she will give all of her mind to me, and then she will come to me. That's the meaning. So, what a blessing if we can give our whole mind to the divine. So, when we look within at our own life, we can examine our mind and which direction is it going. When it doesn't go to the divine, are we wanting so many other things? Let it want God. You know the story of Nachiketa, when he went to Yama, the king of death, and he's a model for us for spiritual life. He was so honest that he recognized that his father was not making the right kind of sacrifice. We know that his father was going to perform the Vajrasrava sacrifice, in which one has to give away everything. But his father was giving away the old cows that are no longer giving milk. And what kind of gift is that? And so Nachiketa, he said, he realized that this sacrifice is not going to bear good fruit. So he tells his dad, "Well, Dad," he can't really tell his dad directly, "Dad, you can't give away all the old cows. You're supposed to give away the good, the actual. That's not a gift." So he said, "Dad, well, to whom are you going to give me?" And Dad ignores him. He's annoyed. And so he asks a second time and a third time, and then Dad gets really annoyed. He says, "I give you to death." So Nachiketa, "Okay, Dad, all things must die, and again they come. All right, I'll go to death." And then Dad realizes I just was speaking in anger. I didn't mean it. "No, Dad, you have spoken. We should follow our words. We should live up to our words. I'm going to death." So he goes to death. And to make a long story short, death is not home, so he waits fasting for 3 days. And when death comes, he's worried, because such a pure-hearted boy fasting for 3 days at his home could spell trouble for Yama. Though he's king of death, even that could spell trouble, such a fiery boy. So he offers him 3 boons. And we know how Nachiketa asks, First boon, let my father not be angry with me. Let him recognize me when I go home. And the second boon, teach me that sacrifice by which we attain to heaven. Then he asks his third boon. This is when he really asks, what's the real meaning of life? What's this thing called death? What happens when a man dies? And Yama says, oh, don't ask about that. And he said, I'm Yama, I can give you whatever you want. I can give you a long life for 1,000 years. I can give you all the delectable treasures of heaven. I can give you $1 million. I can give you these dancing damsels, the likes of which human beings have not seen. I can give these to you. Take these, Nachiketa. Don't ask about death. Take these. And Nachiketa says, no, I don't want those things. You tell me about death. No, Nachiketa. He keeps testing him. You ask for anything you can possibly think of in this world, I'll give it to you. And Nachiketa says, oh, Yama, I know that whatever these things are, whatever happiness they give, in the long run, in the big picture, they're short-lived. They're not really going to give us satisfaction. They're not really going to give us peace. I know. It's not going to give me peace. Only it's going to wear out the senses. And even a long life, even if it's 1,000 years, 1,000 years comes to an end. He has real buddhi. He has a real keen mind. He understands. Even 1,000 years comes to an end one day. We think, oh, 1,000 years, no problem. 1,000 years comes to an end. I don't want those things. I don't want them. So then Yama is very pleased. He's very pleased. And he says, yes, there are two paths in this life. In this world, there are two paths. There's the path of seeking for all the external things and trying to find peace thereby. And there's the path that you have understood, which is turning away from those, recognizing that that's not where we find peace. That really where we find peace is in seeking the divine, and seeking to know who we really are. That we are, there is that ocean of peace within us. So that's a little bit about what do we want? What do we want, really want in life? And recognize, yes, we may have different desires. We're not ready to become wandering beggars, satisfied with just a morsel of bread. But we put God first. That we recognize that ultimately these things will not satisfy us. Ultimately, even getting a Nobel Prize is not going to satisfy us. Many of us are scientists here, no? For most scientists, that's one thing in the back of the mind. If Nobel Prize, that would be some achievement. Nobel Prize would be some achievement. If we're in some other field, there's that kind of recognition. It's not only a financial reward, it's a reward of honor, great honor. Nobel Prize, everybody honors the Nobel Prize laureates. But except for perhaps a few exceptions, those who got the Peace Prize, and not all of them, but a few of them who are saintly, they haven't got peace. They haven't got peace. So, is there a clock? I should keep a little track of the time. I can put my phone out. See, there's a clock here, and I removed the battery because it's ticking, and that disturbs meditation. So this way I can see the time a little bit. In connection with this, what do we want? What do we really want? I'm reminded of a friend of mine who went to seminary. And when he went to seminary, they were asked to live a little bit austere life, and they were given a room with a bed and a desk and a chair. And that was it. And they had their books and whatever. And if they wanted to bring anything more into the room, they had to get permission. Not that they were denied permission. They would be, yes, you can bring anything into the room, and you can keep it for a week. And after a week, they would be asked, now, do you need this thing, or do you just want it? Do you need it, or do you want it? So first thing he said he wanted was a bookshelf, because he had many books and it was making a mess. And after a week, do you need that or do you want it? Yes, I need it. All right, keep it, no problem. And then he thought, I need a nice easy chair to sit in so that I can sit and read in the easy chair. And after a week he was asked, do you need it or do you just want it? And he had to confess, well, actually, I don't really need it. I just want it. So he had to give it up. So sometimes that's a question we can ask ourselves when we find our mind taken up with something and unable to go, do we need it or do we just want it? This distinction between wants and needs. In this world, there's enough to supply everyone's needs, but there's not enough to supply everyone's wants, because wants are endless and wants will never be satisfied. And the only way to really satisfy our wants is to go deeper in spiritual life. But we do have needs. Let's also face it, we have needs, and different people will have different kinds of needs. If we have kids, we need to have a nice home for them. We need to have a place where we can raise the kids. We need to earn a living so that we can clothe our families and feed them and all of that. So we do have needs. But when it finally boils down, this idea of really needing only God is a wonderful wonderful attitude to take. So let's shift gears a little bit and look at Sri Ramakrishna. Of course, Sri Ramakrishna himself is a perfect example of this kind of life, depending utterly and only on the divine and nothing else. And we see Sri Ramakrishna as really a unique kind of person, a man. He was a man. He was in a man's body. But what was he really? And when we look for hints in Swami Vivekananda's teachings, we start to get a deeper understanding. Now, I'm a little reluctant sometimes to go this direction, because Swami Vivekananda, generally in public, he did not talk about Sri Ramakrishna. He was a teacher of Vedanta, especially in this country when he came to the West. He was a teacher of Vedanta. He was a teacher of yoga. He taught the 4 yogas. Jnana Yoga, which means Vedanta, the idea of that we are divine, that's our true nature. And the idea of understanding that through the practice of viveka, vairagya, etc., understanding the truth, meditating on it, realizing it, Jnana Yoga. And he taught meditation, Raja Yoga. He taught us to meditate. And he emphasized this very much as the royal road to realization. And he taught us Bhakti Yoga, love the Lord, love the divine, approach the divine in our spiritual life through love. And he taught Karma Yoga, how to work without attachment. This is how we approach the divine. He only gave 2 talks in the West on Sri Ramakrishna, and they were combined into one lecture called My Master. And afterwards he felt very dissatisfied with it. He was afraid to talk of Sri Ramakrishna because he felt it's like trying to fashion the image of a holy image of Shiva, and when finished it looks like a monkey. He had such high regard for Sri Ramakrishna that he felt he wasn't able properly to describe him, to talk about him. Now, someone like Swami Vivekananda finds it impossible to talk about Sri Ramakrishna. That's amazing. Swami Vivekananda himself was a kind of world teacher. He was what a power he unleashed in this country. He turned this country on its head. At the Parliament of Religions, he blasted the people with the teachings of the divinity of the soul. And he fought tooth and nail with the missionaries. There were attempts on his life made. So much was his impact. And yet he said, I'm not able to talk about Sri Ramakrishna. Girish Ghosh when Swamiji came back to India, Girish Ghosh said, I have one request to make of you. You please write a life of Sri Ramakrishna. He used to call him GC, or Girish Chandra. Girish said, GC, ask me to dry up the ocean. I will do that. Ask me what else was there. Ask me to do anything, I will do that, but don't ask me to write a life of Sri Ramakrishna. Of course, there's another reason he didn't talk about Sri Ramakrishna in the West. He said, yes, someone challenged him in India, why didn't you talk about our master? You ignored him? No, see, if I went there and said, well, let me tell you about Ramakrishna, they would say, well, what is there? We have our Jesus. What more do you have to, who is your Ramakrishna? We have Jesus. But if I talk about the divine, if I talk about spiritual life, if I talk about the principles of spiritual life, then they will ask me, well, is there anyone who can live up to this? Is there anyone who has manifested this in their life? Then I will tell them about Ramakrishna. So he did tell his intimate disciples, 1,000 Island Park, he talked about Sri Ramakrishna. Those who got to know him, who were his personal students, they knew they would hear from him about Ramakrishna, but he wouldn't teach Ramakrishna in public. Again, he would say, let people understand them according to Sri Ramakrishna, who Sri Ramakrishna was, each in their own light. Studying his life, clearly we will understand he was unusual. Let them understand him as a guru, as a teacher, as a saint. But how did Swami Vivekananda look on him? And this we get a hint in his letters, in his recorded conversations, and in the hymns he wrote about him. And those are some of the richest sources of understanding who is Sri Ramakrishna, the hymns that he composed on Sri Ramakrishna. There's one wonderful text, a very short text that he composed on Sri Ramakrishna in the Bengali language. It's almost like a collection of sutras. Sutras, as you know, are very short sentences or even just phrases which indicate spiritual truth, and they're meant to be explained. They're short so they can be memorized, and it's almost that short. It's a text called Hindu Dharma and Sri Ramakrishna. Hindu Dharma and Sri Ramakrishna. And here he paints a picture of, he describes Sri Ramakrishna, he puts Sri Ramakrishna in that same lineup, as it were, with Rama and Krishna and Buddha and Chaitanya, as a world teacher of that same kind of level, a world teacher who has come not just as a saint but as an avatar, as a manifestation of the divine. Yet he was not one to preach it, so feel a little hesitant, because I know some of us are in this gathering will be considering Sri Ramakrishna in that, we'll be looking on him in that way, and others of us may not have that same attitude. And Swami Vivekananda was never one to say that we insist on this. This was his personal view of who is Sri Ramakrishna, and he never would insist that anyone else should take up this view. Rather, he would say, you study Sri Ramakrishna and it doesn't matter how you look on him. But I know, from Swami Vivekananda's side, that he has come to bring a new, usher in a new era in this world, a new era of peace and harmony, and to, as it were, reawaken the ancient tradition of the eternal teachings of the India, the Sanatana Dharma, the eternal way or the eternal truth. So that is laid out in a very brief and powerful way in this little text called Hindu Dharma and Sri Ramakrishna. So I suppose ideally we should have printed out the text so we can follow along with it, but I'd like to, rather than take up the whole text, because that actually, to delve into it would probably take of several days to really get into all the details of it, but to touch on it and to look at some of these powerful sayings. How does Swami Vivekananda understand Sri Ramakrishna? And he starts not with Sri Ramakrishna, but he starts with the ancient tradition of dharma. The term Hinduism, as I think most of us by now should know. Should I do it? Let's have a pop quiz. Where does the term Hinduism come from? Sindhu. Sindhu. What is it? What do you mean Sindhu?
River Sindhu.
The river Sindhu. And?
People to the east of river Sindhu are Hindus.
Okay. And who said so?
Persians and Greeks.
Okay. The Sindhu. Why are they Hindu then? Sindhu.
They cannot pronounce.
They can't pronounce it. So, okay, good. You passed the test. That Hinduism actually it's not a name of the tradition of the ancient tradition of India, of the Veda. That it's something applied from externally. Though nowadays we take the term Hinduism to be the religion of India, the religion of Vedanta, but it's something that's applied externally. And really, the tradition is dharma. And this first sutra that he gives, he says, by the word Shastra, which is generally taken to mean the Vedas, he says, the beginningless and endless Veda is meant. And in matters of dharma, dharma, the Veda is the only dependable authority. This Veda. Beginningless and endless truth. That truth which is beginningless and endless. I think I'd like to just read a short definition of this Veda from Swami Vivekananda, from his address at the Parliament of Religions. You know, when he came to the Parliament of Religions, he laid out everything in that first address, and almost everything after that was just developing it. He says, by the Vedas, no books are meant. He says the Veda, this Veda is without beginning or end. Anadi Anantam. But no books are meant. It would be ridiculous to say our books are without beginning and end. Veda means the accumulated treasury of spiritual laws. The accumulated treasury of spiritual laws discovered by different persons in different times. Just as the law of gravitation existed before it was discovered and named, it's always existing. So Veda is that mass of spiritual, that treasury of spiritual laws, which have been discovered by different people in different times, and those people who discover this truth are called rishis. They were there before they were discovered, and these laws will continue. And it's these laws, these spiritual laws, which guide us in what is dharma. Now, let's talk a little bit about the word dharma, because it's most often translated in our text as religion, and it's a most unsatisfactory translation. The word dharma, it comes from the Sanskrit root dhr, to support, to hold. I took a little note on this. Sister Nivedita had a wonderful discussion on it. The dharma comes from this dhr, to support, to uphold. So dharma actually is what is the essence of something, that which supports it, that which is its true support, that which differentiates it from other things. So if we say everything can have its own dharma, even take something like water. What is the dharma of water? The dharma of water is waterness, that which makes water water. Jalatva is the term, jalatva, that waterness. And the dharma of human beings is, we could say, the power of becoming divine. The power of realizing and manifesting the divinity which is within us. This power differentiates us from all other beings, because no other being has this power of realizing that we are divine and of manifesting the divinity in our own life. So, though a cow also is a manifestation of divinity, and a dog is also a manifestation of divinity, and a paramecium is also a manifestation of divinity, but lacking that power to manifest it. So that is dharma, is manifesting the divinity within. So that's how Swami Vivekananda defines religion. He says religion is realization. Religion is manifesting the divinity within. Let me read a wonderful little quote from Sister Nivedita, who was really what she spoke is nothing but Vivekananda. What Vivekananda spoke is nothing but Ramakrishna, and what Nivedita spoke is nothing but Vivekananda. She defines dharma like this: the essential quality, the permanent, unfluctuating core of substance, the manness of man, the lifeness of life, as it were. It applies to that whole system of complex action and interaction on planes moral, intellectual, economic, industrial, political, and domestic, which we know as India, or the national habit. How beautiful. Can you understand? It's a big quote. Dharma is that which applies to on all planes: moral plane, economic plane, industrial plane, political plane, domestic plane. That whole complex action and interaction on all these planes, which we know as India, which people might call Hinduism, that is it. That is the unfluctuating core of substance applying to this whole complex. So then she gives some examples. It may assume any form according to the secret of the individuality we are considering. To the artist, his art. To the man of science, his science. To the monk, his vow. To the soldier, the name of his king. Any of these or all may be dharma. So, it's clear that this conception of what is dharma is very inadequately translated as religion. It's that whole, ultimately, it's that approach that we take to manifest our calling, manifest our true nature. And when we're on the level of intellect, or on the level of artistic temperament, then dharma, the artist is dharma. But when we come to the level of the deepest level, our dharma is to manifest the divinity within. Our dharma is to serve the divine. Our dharma is to know that we are one with the divine. That is dharma. It is realization, ultimately. So, this idea of dharma is fundamental to this Indian tradition, which we call Hinduism, but which we're going to try to call dharma this weekend. And now it's a little confusing because Buddhism also uses dharma, and when we think of dharma, most people think, oh, the Buddha's way is the dharma of Buddha. And that's it's actually a very close meaning. The dharma of Buddha is the Eightfold Noble Path. But here dharma has, if anything, a broader meaning. It encompasses our whole life. And each one of us has his or her own dharma also to find and manifest in life. And that's unique to each one of us. And yet, overall, our highest dharma, our highest calling, of course, is to realize God, is to realize the divine. So, why this idea of dharma, it applies here also. because it is seen that over the course of history, Dharma also has its rises and falls. There are times when Dharma is deeply understood and many people are living their life according to Dharma. Means they are trying to realize the truth. They're trying to manifest the divinity within. They're trying to see the divine in all and serve the divine. And there are times when it is forgotten. And people are living just in the life of the senses and in the life of the mind, perhaps, and not the life of the spirit. And when the Indian tradition is that when Dharma declines, when it begins to become forgotten, then a great teacher comes, a great manifestation of divinity comes to raise it up again. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says, Arjuna, you have been born many times, and I also have been born many times, but you have forgotten. I don't forget. Yada, yada, who can chant the quote? Guna.
All of us can do that.
Let's do it together.
Okay.
Yada, yada, hi dharmasya glanirbhavati bharata abhyutthanam dhanam srijamyaham paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. What does it mean? Yada yada hi dharmas. When dharma, when it goes into decline, when dharma goes into decline, and when adharma raises, I manifest myself. I manifest myself for what purpose? For the protection of the good, for the destruction of the wicked, and to re-establish dharma. To re-establish dharma. So I think I'll now touch on a few of these salient points that Swamiji gives in this Hinduism and Hindu Dharma and Sri Ramakrishna. So he starts with giving us this idea of Veda, which is this infinite, this treasury of spiritual laws. That's what Veda means. It doesn't mean a book. It doesn't mean anything else. And then he says, well, there are other scriptures also, the Puranas and other scriptures. They're called Smritis. And insofar as they follow this Veda, these spiritual laws, they are also authoritative. Then he says there are two kinds of truth, and we know this. Two kinds of truth. There's the ordinary truth that we gain by the senses, and there's the supreme truth, which is cognizable, he says, by the subtle and supersensuous power of yoga. By the power of yoga, the supersensuous truth is understood. And knowledge acquired by the first means, these senses we have and the instruments we use to extend the senses, is called science. And the knowledge we gain by the second means, the means of yoga, is called Veda. Veda. Brahmajnana. And he says that this body of truth, of Veda, is ever existent. It has no beginning or end. And he says that the Creator himself creates, preserves, and destroys the universe with the help of these truths. It's interesting. He's putting this Veda as really is another name for the divine, another name for God. Now, this power of perception, this power of yogic perception, if we see someone who has this power, we call him or her a rishi. So the rishis, the ancient revealers of this truth, the ancient seers of truth, are called rishis. A rishi means a seer. So the scriptures were not composed, as it were. They're simply seen. The truth is seen and and those truths collected are written down. And that is real dharma. He calls it dharma anubhuti. Anubhuti means experience, perception, direct realization. Anubhuti. Dharma anubhuti. What is the realization? The real dharma? Real religion is translated as, but we are not going to use that term. Attainment of rishihood, becoming a rishi, realizing the truth, perception of Veda. So long as it has not been realized, we haven't. Dharma is an empty word. An empty word. Are you with me? Are you following with me? These points are following one after the other. First we have, he introduces this idea of Veda, and he develops it by giving this idea that it is the repository of all the spiritual laws which are ever existing. And that Dharma is that which is how we live our life in accordance with these laws and manifesting these laws, rather living in accordance with these laws. And the two kinds of knowledge, we have the lower knowledge, which is science, and the higher knowledge, which is perceiving this Veda, which is through the power of yoga. And that's the purpose of life. We cannot say that we really are practicing religion until we have realized it. Then he says this Veda, the authority of this Veda, extends to all places, all ages, all persons. It's not confined only to India or to any place. There are universal laws. And this universal religion is taught only by the Veda. And even here, I think he's hinting at the Vedas, the ancient scriptures of India, the Upanishads specifically, teach this universal religion. We may find in some other places, but mostly that's the universality of the teachings of the Upanishads is perhaps unique. The other religion, we know, we who study Vedanta, we accept all religions as true, in the sense that all religions lead us to that infinite ocean of truth. All religions are cultivating the methods for realization, manifesting the divine, knowing God. But the uniqueness of Upanishads is that they are universal. We don't find any name, and there's no one name that's given, no one kind of discipline. It's a kind of universal, impersonal truth that is presented. So Swamiji feels that this Veda is the highest of the scriptures that of the world. That's why I'm a little reluctant bringing this, because here he's sort of giving his own opinion that yes, all the scriptures are good to a certain extent, but Veda is the highest scripture. And he does say, though, that we must understand what is now called the Vedas. There's lots of stuff in the Vedas. There's Karmakanda, there's a lot of rituals. He's not talking about that. He's not talking about any kind of limited rituals or understandings, only the universal truth, which is presented in the Upanishads. That is, they're not dealing with secular matters or any traditions or what you should do, only with the truth. And he mentions this Veda is divided into two portions, the Jnana Kanda and the Karma Kanda, the portion relating to knowledge and portion relating to rituals. And the rituals and all that, that's all still within this world, this relative world. And those will change, and they must change, and they will continue to change. And so they're not universal. They may be helpful, but they're not universal truth. What is universal truth is that which is taught in Jnana. And he hints here that what he's going to hammer from time to time, blind allegiance to usages that are forbidden by the Shastras and contrary to the conduct of sages is a dominant cause of the downfall of the Aryan race. Aryan race here, I think, at that time, history had not yet revealed that most likely the Sanatana Dharma was not brought by an Aryan invasion into India, but that it grew up natively on the soil of India. But anyhow, what he means is that this tradition that India, as now he felt it was in a state of almost death. How did it come? This kind of just going by actions. Our fathers did it, our forefathers did it, their fathers did it, so we have to do it. This blind allegiance to this kind of lokachar is the term, isn't it? Ritual, blind, these rituals, and forgetting the essence. So he would say that religion in India has entered the cooking pots, entered the kitchen, and has not left it. And even today, we still find that there are you can get the hottest discussions among people following Sanatana Dharma about what is permitted food and what we should eat and what we shouldn't eat. Vegetarian, non-vegetarian, garlic or no garlic, onion, no, you can't eat garlic and onion, no, those are okay. You can get very hot discussions. People have very strong opinions about this. Much stronger opinions than we should really try to serve the people. God is manifest in the poor people. We should serve the people. We should meditate more and realize. No, we'll argue about food. What food we should serve. So it says the Jnana Kanda. That's the Vedanta. That is is that which teaches this universal and eternal dharma. Since it grants liberation through guidance in selfless work, yoga, bhakti, and jnana, and commanding recognition as a guide to the other shore of Maya for all, unaffected by limitations of time and place and person. He really emphasizes this universal, that the teachings are universal. Yoga, nishkama karma, this desireless work without seeking for any results. Yoga, devotion, bhakti, and jnana. This is bringing us to liberation across the shore of Maya. Without any it's applying to all persons, to all places, to all times. Sarvalokik, Sarvabhauma, or Sarvakalik Dharmer Ekmatra Upadeshta. Is the one, this Jnanakanda is the one authority for. So he's really painting this picture of the Vedic, the Veda and the Dharma as a universal tradition applying to the whole world, to all beings. He notes that the later texts which guide us in how to live our life according to Dharma, the Manu, the teachings of Manusmriti it's called, which give all kinds of rules for how to live according to Dharma. Those, he points out, those were taught at the time for the welfare of the people, and they applied they were written and composed according to the need of that time. And that's one of the difficulties in religion, is forgetting that what applied 1,000 years ago does not necessarily apply to us here and now. This division of the scriptures into two separate parts, the eternal universal portion, which we find in the Upanishads, and the relative portion, which applied at that time, but which does not necessarily apply today, which is why the scriptures we have to understand them as living, and then they evolve according to the time and place. And so he's giving this idea. Now, he mentions that what the Puranas do, the Puranic scriptures, they take the teachings of Vedanta, which really are subtle and not so easy to understand, and present them through stories and presenting personalities, make them easy to understand, emphasizing one particular aspect or another of the infinite divine Lord. And then he gives paints this picture of India as in a pathetic condition. And let me read a translation of it, though it's not very happy. But then the descendants of the Aryans, fallen in the course of time from higher principles of conduct, devoid of renunciation, attached only to popular customs and degraded in intellect, were unable to understand the spirit of the Puranas and other texts which taught people of limited intelligence the subtle principles of Vedanta by making them concrete, using ordinary language and expansive descriptions, but which superficially appeared antagonistic to each other, as each emphasized one particular aspect of the divine. And thus, the indivisible Sanatana Dharma, the grand synthesis of all spiritual ideals, was broken up piecemeal, the different sects each trying to offer the other as an oblation into the flames of sectarian hatred and intolerance, whereby they reduced Bharata, the Holy Land, to a hellish realm. This is actually, we were talking about this at tea. It's almost funny how it's like tongue-in-cheek. He describes all these different sects who are all in the tradition of Dharma, but they're getting confused, and each is magnifying his own little sect, and this terrible sectarianism of my God is the only God, and my way is the only way, and Sampradayik Irsha o Krodh Prajalita Kuriya, fanning the flames of jealousy and hate and anger into a fire, and into that fire trying to offer as an oblation. That's why it's so funny, but you can't really translate it. Tan madhe parasparke ahuti divar jonna shatata cheshtita thakiya. Everyone is only trying to offer oblations into this fire of hatred, offering everybody else into that fire, trying to make oblations. We have this idea of the sacrificial fire as a pure and holy fire, and we offer the very best things into that fire as offerings unto the Lord. And here he's saying, but what has happened now is they've made a fire of anger and hatred, and into that they're trying to offer each other as oblations. So it's very difficult to translate, but it's a powerful image, because he's poking fun at it on the one hand. He has lightly telling, and yet at the same time, it's a serious matter. This is the condition, and this is the condition we see worldwide. Not only everyone says my way is the only way, and of course this is the fall of Dharma, and this is which Sri Ramakrishna especially has come to counteract, to break through demonstration in his own life. So it is then when the world had fallen to this state that Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna incarnated himself in India to demonstrate what is true Dharma, to show where, amidst all the divisions and offshoots scattered over the land in the course of history, to show where is the true unity of Hindu Dharma, which seems superficially so. If we look at, Vedanta, when we teach Vedanta, we teach these universal principles. But when we look at India, when Westerners come and how to put it, my mother sometimes tells me, It would have been a lot simpler if you had become a Buddhist monk. Buddhism is so simple. There's 4 noble truths and there's an 8-fold noble path, and that's it. It's very simple. Whereas Hinduism, my gosh, so many gods, so many rituals, so many songs, so many languages, so many mantras. It's overwhelming. And where is the unity in it? It's at first view, it's very difficult to see. Is there a unity? Go to any Hindu temple. You see dozens of gods. Where is God? I thought, well, what is God? There's all these different gods. You're praying to all these different gods. Well, it can be very confusing. And so many different hairstyles, so many different kinds of marks on the forehead. This is one religion? It's like 100 religions wrapped up into one. Where is the unity? Sri Ramakrishna has come to demonstrate the unity. It's in Sri Ramakrishna's life that we find the unity. And these different sects, see now, and this is beauty, as here we find the Hindu temples in America. You find that there's a great, we find in the Hindu temples, of course, we find all the different deities all sitting next to each other, lined up in a row. And everybody now seems to understand, yes, there is one infinite divine principle, and it's manifesting as these different deities, they're different manifestations, different windows into the infinite. And but there were times when the worshippers of Shiva wouldn't look at the worshippers of Krishna. They would turn their heads the other way. We don't associate with those people. Or which Krishna do you worship? Do you worship? No, which Krishna do you worship? Do you worship the Krishna of Vrindavan, or you worship the Krishna Gopal, or you worship the Krishna of the Mahabharata? Oh, that's not the Krishna to worship. You worship Govinda, the Krishna of Vrindavan. So in that kind of those kind of quarrels and superficially we see all the discord has constituted this tradition has become a misleading enigma for Hindus themselves and the butt of contempt for foreigners. So bringing unity, teaching what is the true eternal dharma, the Sanatana dharma. How has he done it? By presenting his own wonderful life as a living embodiment of the Sanatana Dharma. He infused his life with that universal spirit and character of this Dharma, which was lost over the course of history. So that's almost half of this text. I think we better finish it because tomorrow we want to get into other things. So let's press on. I'm going to. He mentions, and this is very sweet. He says that this Shastra, this eternal truth, which is eternally existing, reveals itself spontaneously in the hearts of the rishis, whose hearts have been purified. In all our hearts, when we purify our hearts, they manifest spontaneously. And to teach us this, the infinite divine Lord, who is the very embodiment of that truth, has in this new incarnation discarded all forms of external learning. Sri Ramakrishna he didn't go in school past about the first grade, and he learned to read and write, but barely. He had beautiful handwriting, but later in life he didn't practice. He could hardly write when he was teaching, and yet that so to show that it's not dependent on learning. This time the Lord has incarnated without any external learning. Then he starts getting poetic and inspired. He says, the waters of a falling river acquire greater velocity. the rising wave after a hollow swells higher. So after every spell of decline, we see this waves of rise and fall of Dharma. Every time it falls, it rises higher, says Swamiji. After every spell of decline has risen, the more glorious and powerful afterwards. Such is the history. And after every fall, our revived society is expressing more and more its innate, eternal perfection. And it's the Sarva Bhutantaryami Prabhu, that Lord who is the inner guide of all, is in each successive incarnation manifesting himself more and more. So as the avatar comes again and again, the manifestation is greater. And again our holy land of India has fallen into a swoon, as it were. And again the Lord has come to raise it up. But this present fall, says Vivekananda, which is now almost over, is deeper than it has ever been before. The present darkness which has now enveloped this holy land is darker than any previous darkness. Therefore, this time the awakening is to be all the more glory. He says, before the effulgence of this new awakening, the glory of all past revivals in her history will pale like stars before the rising sun. So he's giving this idea that this time, with the advent of Sri Ramakrishna, whose name he mentions only once in this text, he only mentions Sri Ramakrishna's name once. The awakening, the glorious revival of spirituality is the greatest. And he says that he feels that we're standing on the dawn of a new era, the dawn of a new yuga with the advent of Sri Ramakrishna. He used to say sometimes the Satya Yuga has begun with the birth of Sri Ramakrishna. At the very dawn of this momentous epoch, the reconciliation of all aspects and ideals of dharma and worship is being proclaimed. It was always there, this idea of reconciling all the different angles of dharma, of religious thought, but it is now being declared to humanity in trumpet voice. This new dispensation, how does he call it in Bengali 27? Nava Yuga Dharma. This it's the dharma of the age, as in every age. As he was explaining that in every age the traditions will change. The universal truth remains, but according as the need arises, the practices will change. This is the Nava Yuga Dharma. The dharma of this age is bringing the supreme welfare to all the world, and especially to India. He names especially India and to the whole world. And the inspirer of this Nava Yuga Dharma, Pravartaka, the one who is starting it, as it were, who is presenting it, Sri Bhagavan, he is simply a manifestation of all the previous avatars. Now, these last two paragraphs are full of power and fire. Don't know if we can get it from the translation too well. The dead, he says, the inspirer of this dispensation, Sri Ramakrishna, though he doesn't name him by name, he says Sri Bhagavan, is the reformed and remodeled manifestation of all the past great epoch makers, all the past founders of Dharma. O man, have faith in this and lay it to heart. The dead never return. The past night does not reappear. A spent wave does not arise anew. Neither does a person inhabit the same body over again. So, from the worship of the dead past, O man, we invite you to the worship of the living present. From the regretful brooding over bygones, we invite you to the activities of the present. From the waste of energy in retracing lost and demolished pathways, we call you back to broad, new laid highways lying very near. This is a highway lying very near. Come, stop searching all those old pathways in the ancient times. We have a new highway right here, lying right here. He that is wise, let him understand. Then he suggests that power which the very first glimpses of that power which are reverberating all over the universe. Imagine that power as being fully manifested. Conceive in your mind the full manifestation of that power, which at the very first impulse has roused distant echoes from all the four quarters of the globe, and discarding all idle misgivings, weaknesses, and the jealousies characteristic of enslaved peoples, come and help in the turning of this mighty wheel of the new dispensation. He says, this is Mahayoga Chakra, the mighty wheel of this new yuga, this wheel of the new dispensation. Come and join it. Amra Prabhur Das, Prabhur Putra, Prabhur Leela Sahayak. We are the servants of the Lord. We are the children of the Lord. We are the helpers in the Lord's divine play. Have faith in this and come up to the field of action. So this is how he ends his fiery call. He is really saying this is a new age with the advent of Sri Ramakrishna. The kind of things we are seeing now, these are just the first glimpses of the tidal wave which will crash over the tidal wave of spirituality. And not only that, he's calling all of us. We have a responsibility. He says, come. Stop the worship of the dead past. Come to the living present. This is a new dispensation. This harmony of religions, yes, and knowing that realizing God is the goal of our life. This, come, help in the turning. We are the Lord's children. We are the Lord's servants. We are helpers in His play. Come up to the field of action. It is not enough to sit quietly, but we are to participate in the unfolding of this Yoga Dharma. So, sorry, we went up to 9 o'clock with that, and now is it time to close, or do we have any comments or questions? Sorry, I kind of overwhelmed myself with that.
You can use the microphone.
We had kind of a double header here, because at first we talked about getting closer to the Lord, and then I felt that it will be very valuable to understand about Sri Ramakrishna. And tomorrow, what I'd like to do is look at the hymns Swamiji composed on Sri Ramakrishna, which is a completely different flavor from this. This is full of analysis and fire also, that to come up to the field of action. Whereas the hymns are divine and glorious, and we get a deep understanding of the nature of Sri Ramakrishna. So it's a kind of, but I thought to try to give this idea that behind Swami Vivekananda has this attitude, though he's not pushing it down anyone's throat, but when he starts writing fire, he wants us to recognize that something unique has happened here, and let's be a part of it. That's what he's saying.
So Maharaj, So an average person like myself, that who does the work and takes care of family and pays bills and lives his life. If Sri Ramakrishna would see my life, if I imagine that, what would he tell me to change, or to what would be his comments about average person living their life and doing their things?
He used to say, if you have a one with many zeros after it, if you have a 1 with 100 zeros after it, you have a very big number. He didn't know much arithmetic. He learned addition. He could manage that, but subtraction he couldn't do. And division and multiplication were out of the question. And yet he knew this very important mathematical truth. If you have a 1 with a lot of zeros after it, you have a very big number. Say you have 100 zeros, 1 followed by 100 zeros. What happens if you take away the 1? You have 100 zeros, which is? Zero. So likewise, all the things in our lives are zeros. If we put a 1 in front of them, we have a big number. What is that 1? That's God. That's the Lord. Put the Lord at the first of it. Put the Lord in the beginning. Dedicate everything to God. He used to say, what is ignorance? My house, my family, my job, my money. What is knowledge? What is the ripe ego? Lord, it is your house. I'm taking care of it. Lord, these are all your children. I am looking after them. Lord, this is your work you have put me to. Surrender, taking refuge in God, putting God first. That's so we're not to change what we're doing, only we're to change our attitude. Put God into it, put the Lord into it. Everything is do all our work as service to the Lord. And that's it will transform our life, and it also changes the lives of those around us. One of our close devotees and who became president of the Vedanta Society of Southern California in Hollywood. How did he come to Vedanta? It's very interesting. At work, one of his colleagues he admired one of his colleagues at work. He noticed something a little different about him, that something about him. What is it? He couldn't put his finger on. He had a certain maturity, he had a certain wisdom, he had a certain calmness. He wasn't engaging in backbiting and jealousies and all that, like we find in so many office politics and all that. He had a certain depth. And he thought, I'd like to be like that. Something about him I like. And he asked him, one day he asked him, I'd like to ask you, there's something a little different about you, what is it? And so he brought him to the Vedanta Society. He was a devotee. He brought him to the Vedanta Society. This gentleman saw this devotee in his place of work and understood something different about this. We preach whether we know it or not. We're preaching through our life. So when we bring our life into alignment with Veda, as we've been discussing, when we bring our life into alignment with Dharma, when we start leading a dharmic life, we not only change our own lives, we change the lives of those around us. Our people are transformed. And I love this hearing about how he became president of the Vedanta Society afterwards, all thanks to this devotee who was living his life, not proclaiming anything, but just in the way he was living his life.
Thank you so much.
Swami, one question. How to realize and how much we are so close to God?
That's what we're trying to talk about. We're talking about how to realize. So I think some of it has to do with how we think of ourselves. if we think that we are very different from God, then we'll feel that we are very far away from God. If we think, oh, I am a terrible sinner, God is all pure and all powerful, but I am a terrible sinner, well, I'll feel that I'm very far from God. God is very far away from me. And Sri Ramakrishna also said, God is very far away from the worldly minded. But if we think of ourselves as divine, if we think, I am not just this body, I am not even a mind, I am spirit, my true nature is spirit, then if we can begin to think of ourselves in that way, then we start to feel, yes, then must be close to God. I am close to, because my nature is of God. My nature is of the same nature. My true nature is very similar to God. And as we move forward, of course, we find that I am one with God is what we realize ultimately. But so we start by changing how we think of ourselves. We remind ourselves every day before we sit for meditation, or as we sit for meditation, remind ourselves, I am pure spirit. My body is pure, my mind is pure. I am not the body or mind. I am that light which animates this body. I am that consciousness, that spirit which animates this body. I am that spirit, I am that consciousness which is aware of all these thoughts in my mind. I am that pure infinite consciousness. And when we start thinking of ourselves like that, then we begin to easily feel that we are close to God.
Thank you.
So we have just a. What do you do at the close of a session? Do we sing something? Do we chant something?
You can Om Shanti.
Let's chant together 3 times Om, and then we'll chant Om Shanti 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 together. Well, thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts on this text, which might have been a little bit more, we bit off a little more than we could chew properly, but you can look it up. It's in the complete works of Swami Vivekananda. You'll find it there. It's also online. Hinduism and Sri Ramakrishna, I think, is translated in the Complete Works English. Bengali, Volume 6 of the Bengali Complete Works. So now we have
Dinner
in the other house. We have dinner in the other house. Please join us for dinner.